There's a steel shaft inside this gearbox carrying 2,000 pound-feet of torque, and nothing is holding it. No bearing at the ends, no bushing. It hangs in open space, balanced on the teeth of the gears it happens to be driving. Knock those teeth loose, and it drops. And the man reaching for the next gear has no idea, because he's about 3 seconds from doing the one thing the company that built this transmission begs its drivers never to do. He's going to take his foot off the clutch and shift anyway. To the four-wheeler idling behind him at the light, what happens next looks like nothing at all. A truck pulls away from a green light, but inside that aluminum case, somewhere between the diesel and the drive axle, there's a small mechanical performance unfolding that almost no one in a passenger car will ever understand, and that fewer and fewer truck drivers can actually pull off. This is the gearbox that drew a hard line straight through the middle of an entire profession. On one side of that line, drivers. On the other side, people who just hold the steering wheel, and the line is vanishing. Everyone knows the sound, the grinding, that bone-deep metal-on-metal shriek that says somebody just missed a shift. We even have a phrase for it, grinding the gears. And it's wrong, the gears aren't what's grinding. In a modern heavy box like this one, the gear pairs are in constant mesh. They never separate. They're always spinning together, every ratio at once, their teeth permanently in mesh, whether you're using them or not. At any given moment, exactly one of them is doing the work, and it's chosen not by sliding gears into each other, but by a sliding collar, a toothed ring that drops over the gear you want and locks it to the shaft. A dog clutch. So when you hear that horrible noise, the gears are fine. What you're actually hearing is that collar slamming its teeth against a gear spinning at the wrong speed, skating off it, machine gunning against it, refusing to drop home. It isn't the sound of gears grinding. It's the sound of a missed handshake between two pieces of metal turning at speeds that don't agree. The old name for these transmissions captures it perfectly. They called them crash boxes. Not because anything crashes, but because of the crash, the noise a botched shift makes. The name is just onomatopoeia for failure, which raises the obvious question. If the collar only slides home clean when both sides are spinning at the same speed, what makes them agree? In your car, you never think about it because a little cone-shaped friction brake called a synchronizer does the thinking for you. It grabs the gear, drags it up or down to match, and only then lets you engage. It's foolproof. It's also completely absent from most of this transmission. Here, there is no synchronizer. The driver is the synchronizer. To get that collar to slide silently into the next gear, he has to bring the engine to the exact speed that gear will be turning at the new road speed, by ear, by feel, by a blip of the throttle judged to within a few dozen RPM. There are 2 ways to do it. He can double clutch, push the pedal, pull to neutral, release, blip the throttle, push the pedal again, and slot the gear as the speeds cross. Or he can throw the clutch away entirely and float it. No pedal at all, just rolling the lever out of one gear and hovering it against the next, throttle dancing, waiting for that half-second window where engine and road agree, then letting the collar fall in like it was greased. Hit the window and it's seamless, almost silent. A genuinely beautiful thing. Miss it by a hair, and the whole cab hears about it. And the window doesn't sit still. A good driver isn't just listening to the engine, he's reading the whole truck. The weight on his back, the grade under his wheels, the wind. With 80,000 pounds shoving him up a hill, the road speed bleeds away the instant he pulls out of gear, so the speed he's trying to match is dropping by a fraction of a second. Spend too long hunting for it, and the window slides shut below him. Now he's in neutral, on a grade, fully loaded, with no gear engaged and no drive to the wheels. The exact situation every driver has a story about, and the one nobody wants to live through twice. Getting it back means matching a gear from almost a standstill on an incline against gravity with traffic stacking up in the mirror. The float isn't a party trick. On the wrong hill, it's the difference between a clean shift and a very bad afternoon. And here's the part that breaks people's brains about a manual semi. Once it's rolling, the clutch barely matters. You need it to launch from a dead stop, to drag the truck off the line from zero. After that, every single shift can be floated without ever touching it. The pedal, you'd assume, is the heart of driving a manual truck. Mostly just sits there. A big Fuller uses its clutch almost nothing like a car does. The clutch does hide one more job, though, and it's a trap for anybody who learned on a car. Down in the last inch of pedal travel, past the point where the clutch is fully released, there's a clutch brake, a disc whose entire purpose is to stop the input shaft from spinning so you can drop into a starting gear from a standstill without a fight. You only ever touch it when you're completely stopped. Shove the pedal to the floor while you're still moving, and you jam that brake against a shaft spinning at full chat, and the truck will buck and slam and chew itself up. The thing that helps you when stopped will punish you the instant you're rolling. Step back, and the strangeness of it begs a bigger question. Why build it this way at all? Why hand the driver a job a $50 part does automatically in a hatchback? The answer is torque, and it's the reason the whole crude-looking design is actually the sophisticated one. A synchronizer is a friction brake, and friction brakes have limits. A highway diesel puts out 1,500, 2,000, sometimes more pound-feet of torque. Run that through a first gear reduction of 20 to 1 or worse, and the loads at the gear teeth, plus the brutal shock loads of a heavy rig dumping the clutch or slamming into a pothole at full weight, are simply more than a precision synchro cone can take. It would cook. Under that kind of shock load, it would wear out fast. Simple, blunt, robust dog teeth shrug off that abuse for 1,000,000 miles. The unsynchronized box isn't a leftover from a cruder age that trucks never got around to modernizing. It's a deliberate choice, the tough answer to a problem the elegant solution couldn't handle. And the rest of the design exists to make those tough gears tougher. The trick is the twin countershaft. Instead of one lay shaft carrying the load, there are two, sitting 180 degrees apart, cradling whatever gear is engaged from both sides at once and splitting the torque almost perfectly in half. Half the load through each path means every gear can be made narrower and stronger, which is the whole reason this box can throw out the synchronizers and still outlast the truck wrapped around it, which brings us back to that shaft from the very beginning, the one held up by nothing. That floating main shaft isn't a flaw or an oversight. It's the most elegant idea in the entire machine. With a countershaft squeezing it evenly from each side, the shaft self-centers under torque, held in perfect balance by the very teeth it's driving. It doesn't need a bearing because it's being supported from both directions at once, suspended in the middle of its own load. The part with nothing holding it is the part that proves the engineers knew exactly what they were doing. And the company that worked it out started by making washboards. The Fuller brothers ran a manufacturing outfit turning out washboards and wood products before they ever touched an automobile in 1903. That outfit became Fuller Manufacturing. Eaton bought it in 1958, and the twin countershaft Roadranger it went on to build became the single most profitable acquisition in Eaton's history. A company that started in the laundry aisle ended up setting the standard for the heaviest trucks on Earth. But for all that engineering, the legend told around it doesn't quite hold up. Starting with the number on the side. 13 speeds. It sounds like 13 evenly spaced gears you climb like a ladder, rung by rung, and that the mark of a real driver is hitting everyone. It isn't 13 of anything. It's a 5-speed front box bolted to a 3-speed auxiliary section. Low gear is a starting gear only. You use it to drag the truck off the line and then never again, never in high range. The other 4 ratios get used once down in low range, then a second time up in high range, and only those high-range gears can be split by the splitter. Do the math, and your mighty 13-speed is really about 9 distinct gears, with 4 extra overdrive steps stacked on the top end. It's why the old hands will tell you, flat out, that you're driving a glorified 9-speed, and the splitter is overrated. On the move, a driver's right hand is juggling 3 things almost at once. The H pattern of the lever, a range switch for the low-to-high jump, and a splitter button for the half steps up top. A quiet little choreography run by feel while the left foot stays off the clutch entirely. And plenty of drivers don't bother with most of it. They run the upper gears straight through and treat 13th as a single tall overdrive for cruising the interstate. The whole mythology of you'd better catch all 13 or you don't belong. The gear count itself doesn't back it up. And the proudest boast of all, the one stitched into the identity of the unsynchronized trucker, no synchros anywhere, all me, all skill, scoffs that one's wrong too. On a 13 or 18 speed, the giant jump between low range and high range, the widest single ratio gap anywhere in the box, is handled by a synchronizer. You pre-select the range with a little switch on the lever, and as you pass the stick through neutral, the transmission makes that range change for you on its own. The single hardest shift to match by hand, the one spanning the biggest gap, the one most likely to grind, that's the one shift the driver never has to match. The hardest part of the job was quietly automated decades ago, and the legend simply never caught up. Then there's the part nobody on this side of the Atlantic likes to hear. This rite of passage, this skill that supposedly defines truckers everywhere, it's largely a North American thing. It is not the most universal trucker skill on earth. Across Europe, synchronized manual gearboxes have long been the norm. Drivers there accepted the added cost and upkeep of the synchros for the smoother shift, and the learning curve is gentle by comparison. You work a 40-ton truck a lot more, like you'd shift a car. The unsynchronized crash box, the older, rawer design, never took over the way it did in America. A man who spent 30 years running freight across Europe may have never floated a single gear in his life, and never needed to. The badge of honor turns out to be a regional habit wearing a universal costume. Strip all of that away, though, and you still hit the one fact that should have ended the bragging a long time ago. The skill that separates a real driver from a steering wheel holder, the float, the clutchless shift, the thing men line up to demonstrate at the fuel island. Eaton tells you not to do it. In writing, the manufacturer recommends the floating technique not be used, that drivers work the clutch on every shift, and warns that sloppy floating piles wear onto the gearbox. The defining skill of the entire trade, the thing you do to prove you're the real article, is, according to the people who designed and built the box, the wrong way to drive it. So you'd assume the thing that finally killed the skill was some clean break, a different transmission, a new machine that made the old art obsolete. It wasn't. The automatic that swept the industry and supposedly buried the manual trucker is the exact same crash box. The auto shift, the ultra shift, the automated boxes that now fill nearly every new truck on the lot, they're conventional Eaton Fuller manual transmissions. Same gears, same twin countershaft, same floating main shaft held up by nothing. They've just been fitted with electronic controls, air-powered actuators, and a fistful of sensors, then topped with a module that works the clutch and throws the shifts for you. A little gremlin bolted to the lid, blipping the throttle, matching the revs, floating the gears, doing by computer the precise thing a skilled hand does by ear. The skill wasn't replaced by some new technology. It was copied, shrunk, and screwed to the top of the very same gearbox. And the gremlin is better at it than you are. It never misreads the window. It never grinds. It doesn't get tired and clumsy at hour 11 of a 14-hour day. Everything the legend was built on, the machine now does flawlessly, every shift, forever. Which leaves one last turn of the screw, and it isn't mechanical at all. It's written into the law. Take your commercial driving test in an automatic, and the examiner stamps a restriction onto your license. E, no manual transmission. To get that E removed, you have to go back, pull a learner's permit all over again, and retake the entire road test in a manual. And because these automated boxes count as automatics for the purpose of that test, every new driver trained on one gets branded with the E by default, without ever once working a clutch. So the driver coming up today doesn't just never learn the float. He's stamped, on day one, as someone who legally cannot operate the machine his predecessors built their entire identity around. In 2005, manuals were better than 95% of the trucks on the road. Today, the new builds run better than 90% automatic. The manual chased off into a handful of vocational corners. The line through the profession isn't just fading out of the truck stops and out of memory. It's being struck out of the law itself, one road test at a time. until the system no longer recognizes any difference between a driver and a steering wheel holder.